The more freedom I got as an artist, the less I created. For years, I was working for other people. My first big dream was to become a concept artist in the game industry. And after achieving this and working for many years in the industry, I went through a period of change of interest. I would call it that. And don't get me wrong, working in the video game industry or working on animation movies as a background artist is also an artistic life. But since the flexibility and circumstances of my life changed, I constantly find myself inside of a room by myself thinking about art rather than producing it. I think that this is a very modern problem because today we do not only create art anymore. We think about art, we consume art, we compare art, we analyze art, we optimize art, and we market art. But actually sitting down and doing the thing, that becomes the hardest part, apparently. I always had the tendency of drifting too much into my own world, but I never had the time to lose myself in it because I was hired to provide a service. I was hired to design concepts, to solve problems, to make characters and environments for others. There was movement and momentum. And honestly, this was the best time in my life. Not only because I learned a lot, but because I was riding the wave. I was exactly where I was supposed to be. And maybe this is something we underestimate. Sometimes limitations are healthy. Sometimes having a deadline, a client, a responsibility protect us from ourselves. Because when suddenly nobody tells you what to do anymore, you meet your own mind. And your own mind can become a very complicated place. I would never thought that I would move towards more classical, traditional way of being an artist. And I didn't really choose that path on purpose. I would say the path chose me, to be honest, because there's something about drawing traditionally with ink on paper that simply doesn't let me get away from it. Because the only thing that is always fun for me is drawing on paper. No Wacom pen, no software updates, no notification, no endless tab options or Control-Z. Just paper, ink, thoughts, and movement. And maybe this is why traditional art feels so alive to me. Because it forces presence. I can't endlessly undo. I can't infinitely zoom in. I can't hide behind perfection. You either put the line down or you don't. And I think there is something deeply human about that. But my problem right now, and I don't know how it is for you, is that I feel like the world stands open in front of me. I can draw whatever I want. But what does that even mean? Does it mean I should draw whatever? Should I draw everything? Should I just draw? Or should I build something? Make something super cool and maybe other people find it cool as well. Then do I draw for attention? Or do I draw to be seen? Do I draw for myself? And I think social media made this question even harder. Because now every drawing immediately becomes a performance. Every sketch becomes content. And I hate this. Every artwork becomes something that can be judged in 5 seconds by a stranger scrolling on a toilet somewhere in the world. And slowly you stop hearing your own voice. You start creating with imaginate eyes watching you all the time. And then the weird thing happens, you don't even draw anymore because you love drawing. You draw because you're trying to predict reactions. And we know predictions kills flow. There is no flow in prediction. I think every artist knows this feeling. Those moments where you sit down for what feels like 20 minutes and suddenly 6 hours pass. You forgot your phone. You forgot Instagram, TikTok. You forgot yourself. You forgot time. Maybe you forgot the sandwich in the oven. You were simply inside the process. And this is probably one of the purest forms of happiness human beings can experience. Not happiness because somebody validated you. Not happiness because you got likes. But happiness because you disappeared inside the act of creation itself. And as we know today, that the so-called flow state is something that you try to achieve. And not when life is easy, not when everything is perfect, but when we are fully immersed in doing something meaningful. And maybe that's why overthinking hurts so much. Because overthinking removes us from the present moment. Every time I go down the rabbit hole of thoughts, I end up getting sad. And not because the world is bad, because I'm sitting here like an idiot thinking about drawing what I should draw instead of actual drawing. And maybe overthinking is simply creativity without movement. Think about it. Maybe you are creative in that moment, but you're not moving. So what is the opposite reaction that you can do in this moment? Because energy is trapped in your mind. It's potential without action. And what does overthinking actually mean? Is it a combination of anxiety and fear? But fear doesn't really exist. It's not a real emotion. Most of it is only inside of our head. And if all these made-up problems about what I should draw were actually real, then what would happen if every person on this world disappeared except me? Would I still care about what other people think about the things I draw? Would it even matter? Or could I just draw for the sake of drawing? Could I draw simply because I love drawing? Because for me, it feels like breathing. I like it. And maybe that's the answer. Maybe art was never supposed to become this strategic thing. Maybe humans were making art long before they were trying to build an audience. Just imagine, do you think people were drawing on cave walls thousands of years ago because an algorithm was telling them to do that? Because that's the thing that makes them famous, rich, popular? No. It was all because there's something deeply natural in leaving marks behind. And I think somewhere inside of us, that instinct still exists. I think the problem are our feelings. We are all just containers for thoughts, emotions, dreams, and experiences. And every piece of information out there is like water filling up this container. Every person we meet, every experience we make, every situation we go through, everything fills up this container. And today we absorb more information in one day than people maybe absorbed in weeks hundreds of years ago. We have images, videos, opinions, news, art, comparisons constantly. No wonder our mind feels heavy. No wonder we feel creatively exhausted before even starting. And I think this is why silence became so important to me. Not silence as in doing nothing, but silence as in creating enough space to actually hear your own thoughts again. Because if your mind is constantly filled with noise from outside, eventually you lose the connection to your own instinct. But I know one thing. Whenever I feel like I have too much in my head, I need to do multiple things. I need to write things out, and I go to the gym or do any physical activity. Because that's the only way for me to get out of my mental rabbit hole. Because human beings are not designed to sit all day inside abstract thoughts. The body needs movement, but also the mind needs movement. Creativity itself is movement. And then I wonder, how do I find the balance? How do I see things the way I see them? Bring them onto paper, but not lose myself in emotions, thoughts, and overthinking. I think it's important to figure out the source of the emotion and the information coming into our system. And I think it's important that we filter this information, that we become truly aware where things are coming from. Because not every thought deserves attention and not every emotion tells the truth. Sometimes the mind creates problems simply because the mind is afraid of uncertainty. And art is uncertainty. Every blank page is uncertainty. And I can't fully control creativity. You can't control fully creativity. And honestly, you shouldn't control that. Especially not in the creative process. Because some of the most beautiful things happen accidentally. A wrong line, a spilled ink mark, an unexpected shape. Sometimes mistakes have more soul than perfection. But we still need to understand our tools to make things. From a classical standpoint, the goal of art is to create any physical object or things, or today also digital things. Novels, music, paintings. But what we need to realize is that what we produce at the end isn't actually the art. The art is when we produce things. The art is when we take the pen and put it on paper. The end result technically doesn't even matter. But the creation process matters. And maybe this is difficult to accept in a world obsessed with results. Because we are constantly taught to think about outcomes. Followers, money, recognition, growth. But creation itself already has value. If you create. A human being sitting down and transforming thoughts into something visible. That alone is meaningful. Even nobody ever see it. And maybe this is what we need to relearn. To reconnect creativity with play again. To reconnect art with curiosity. To reconnect drawing with a simple joy of making marks. Not every drawing needs to become a masterpiece. Not every sketch needs a purpose. Not every artwork needs an explanation. Sometimes you just need to draw because your soul feels lighter afterwards. So maybe the resolution to all of that is simple. Don't think, don't think, don't think. Produce, draw, paint, create, read, move, observe, and live. Absorb outside information. Fill up your container. Sort through it. Take the things that truly interest you and build your own creative place of happiness. And then continue to produce and produce and produce more. Because momentum creates clarity. And clarity rarely becomes before action. It usually comes after action. Stop waiting to feel ready. Stop waiting to fully understand yourself before you begin. Maybe understanding yourself is something that only happens while creating, not before it. Like and subscribe. See you in the next video. Take care. Bye-bye.